right, so we'll get into first the confidentiality training. And of course, we all know as drivers, we are privy to confidential information with our students. That is not to be shared, obviously, with anyone except those that need to know the information. So let's go ahead and get started through this. Confidentiality. What is confidentiality? Protect all personal identifiable data, information, records collected, used, or maintained by an agency. Laurel County Public Schools is that agency. That's okay. What are the laws that protect the students? You have the FERPA, have Kentucky regulations, and we have IDEA, individual with disabilities regulations, and Section 504 Act. So we got a lot of stuff that we have to adhere to on these laws. Educational records. Most of us don't have access to personal and family data, do we? Sure we do. It's called an emergency card. We've all got this on every child that's on our bus. So those are things that have to be protected. Evaluation and test data, that we don't have. 504 plans, special needs transportation folks will have some limited access to that. The report cards, written accounts from a parent to teacher, we don't have, but we do have what? We have our write-ups and we have our warning sheets. So this is applicable to us. Those things we have to be able to protect, and that's not only to protect that data from other adults, we have to protect that data from other students as well. So electronic information, you're not so much going to have that as well. Medical records, we do have medical information. So let's just keep our mind on that fact. The things that we do have for these students, we are the guardians of that information is the way to look at that. Imagine it's your own child. You wouldn't want someone to be able to access information, private information about you and your family. Let's be good guardians and protect the information about these other families as well. And discipline records go along with that. Go ahead, Marshall. Biometric record, we're not going to see that so much as that goes. And here's the thing of the information: name of the child, parent or other family members, addresses, personal identification number, social security number, indirect identifiers. All of those things line up with our emergency cards, alternate stop cards. How does the school district ensure? We make sure that all staff is trained in confidentiality of records. Hence, that's what we're doing here this morning. School-based councils, volunteers, cafeteria workers, students, teachers, field trips. That's when we will encounter some of these volunteers. Of course, a lot of you work out in the school system as lunchroom monitors, some custodians, that type of job. You can't discuss this stuff across those lines either. And don't partake in any information. You know, when you're out there and you're working with somebody in the lunchroom and they're not on the school bus and they come up with, hey, do you have trouble out of that kid on your school bus? Can't discuss that stuff. Right to inspect protected records. Parents, guardians, and eligible students must be allowed to inspect and review educational records within a reasonable time. We have those records, but you would not turn any records over directly to a parent or a student. That would have to come through me, and that ultimately would come through central office. So if you have a parent requesting that type of information, you need to refer them directly to me on those things. You're not authorized to release that to the parent. Go ahead, Marshall. Who do we ensure parents see? How do we ensure that? Well, there we go. Through those requests, and those are the items. Grades, discipline reports, which is what's going to basically cover us when speaking with a parent. Again, we don't have that big of an opportunity to do that. We do some, but we cannot discuss any other student other than their child. And as well. Back that up there just a second, Marshall. That bottom one, and I'm not saying we do, but this is an easy place to get caught up in doing this. Meet somebody out in the grocery store, talk about the job, talk about what a tough day you had, how hard it was with this one particular student. Seems harmless. You're sitting there talking bus driver to bus driver, but you never know who's over in the aisle across from you. What if it's that kid's parents, grandparents, aunt, uncle, next door neighbor, and they overhear the conversation? Always have to be aware of that. So it's best just to not do it, and then that way you don't have to worry about who's around hearing the conversation. Go ahead. Parent-teacher conferences is where they'll get this, or direct conferences either with myself or someone higher up at central office is how this information. And I'll work with the superintendent on anything that is questionable. I do go over some things like seating charts, seating arrangements, what you folks do with children that are disruptive or causing discipline issues. I've had plenty of parents over the past year come in and sit down with me in my office. And they only get the information that's pertinent to your route and their child. Emails, which we don't use email that much here, communicating back and forth, but there you do have to caution that as far as confidentiality statement is at the bottom of your email, and for each outgoing email, it should be automatically on there. And again, do not give information over the phone because you can't identify the person on the other end of the line. And that's something that we never do when we receive a phone call from a parent. Brittany, that's one of her first things that she does. She confirms that person's ID through IC. Just like you would at a bus stop, we do that even with the telephone there in the office. Go ahead, Marshall. That's an example statement for the email. Again, not applicable, but if you do use your email, your school email a lot, and you do not have this statement, check with me, Marshall, or Brittany, and we can send you that, and you can copy and paste it on the bottom of your email. It's no more difficult than that. Okay. Whew. Contents of personal electronic devices may prove to be very embarrassing. Issues regarding electronic information. Now, that is another thing. We've added these cameras. Now we have an electronic information to go along with our written information. If anyone has questions, you have a parent come up to you at the bus stop. I see you've got cameras. My kids tell you you've got cameras. I want to know, I want to know, I want to know. You refer that directly to me or Marshall, because we have to handle that information with confidentiality just the same. You can't say, well, I've got your son on video throwing a punch. You'll need to talk to Mr. Hale and Mr. Rainey and go from there. Lesson plans, not so much. Reports, individual modifications, not so much on us, really, but just any information that we handle students. Again, 99% of what we have is on those emergency cards. Just, you have to protect those, and write-ups. Whenever you need to share information, that's going to be to a substitute driver that's running your bus route. That's going to be to Marshall Rainey, myself, Victoria, Daisy, if it's pertinent to a field trip or special needs transportation, they'll be sharing that information back to you, but that's the chain, that's how you handle that. Only the people that have a need to know this information. Think about what we discussed. I think the grocery store example was a pretty good idea, or a pretty good example of that. Where are you going to discuss? Where's it taken? Who's listening? Why is it that the discussion took place? So let's make sure that we're following the guidelines and we only talk to who needs to know, and that we're aware of who's around us or who could be involved in the conversation accidentally. Who can access student records? Again, parents, student, representative, student who's 18 years old or emancipated, authorized employees of the district, and staff from the U.S. and State Department of Education on official business. And that's the same way with your personal information. You may not think about that, but we go to great lengths to make sure that no one is able to see your personal information in your driver record. Frankfurt does come down and they inspect those records every year. They give us a list of names that they want to inspect. That's the only records that we submit to them. And they do not get in our file cabinet. We pull the files for them and hand them to them. So we take great care to make sure your information is guarded. In the same way, we need to make sure that the children's information is guarded. All right, Mark. Recording of access. School must maintain a log of the student's records that identify, and we do that. It's called IC for the discipline issues. Schools have more record keeping that they are involved in, so you really don't have to worry about the access of records. You make those references to me or Marshall or Victoria if it's a special needs at this time. Do guardians, divorced or separated parents, foster parents, and surrogate parents have the right to review students' records? Both parents have a right to view the records. Joint custody, foster parents. Now, we deal a lot with that, and we talk sometimes with those sets of parents or guardians, and we have to realize that they do have the authorization. But again, you refer that up to our office so that we can be the one communicating that information. Go ahead, Marshall. Where prior consent is not required, disclosure within an agency with legitimate educational interest, including Department of Pupil Personnel, anything at central office, our police department, or other law enforcement agencies, child protective services, those types of agencies we do interact with on the sharing of information. Public notice to parents, this information designated directly information and given opportunity to refuse. We don't actually, out of our department, get into this. This is more central office level type items. Students' name, addresses, but we see there's the big hitters on the information that they want protected: name, address, phone number, date of birth, and what they are active in. And look here again. Notice something there, students' weight and height. So it even goes down to the size, shape of someone. Discuss nothing with anyone. Go ahead, Marshall. How many students review and inspect his MAEA students? Emancipated students are eligible. We have a couple of those in the school system. You handle them just like you would a parent. Have an emancipated student come up to you on the bus and they demand to see some type of discipline issue that you wrote them up for, you report that directly to me and Marshall. You treat that individual just like you would his parents, because he's acting in his own benefit or her own benefit. Sure.
If a student is 18, they are emancipated for that. However, if they still have to have the note from the principal, they can sign their own note to the principal. The principal still has to sign it.
Right.
They can get off the location other than the front.
Yeah, they can give themselves a permission note to ride home with someone, to get off someplace else, but that doesn't relieve, just like we have to have, like Marshall said, in case you couldn't hear, an 18-year-old can write themselves their own note for the bus, but it still has to be signed by a principal just like anyone else's does. How does the school system release those records? Parent, legal guardian, or emancipated student must make a written request. Special ed students and students currently being evaluated, those are through ARC meetings usually. Non-special ed written requests still obtain and need the purpose for the release. Making the request and why do you need it? And it may be released to the Department of Social Services. That's one of those interagencies that I was talking about earlier. Every employee of Kentucky Public School District must adhere to the confidentiality protection of all students. All student information should be kept confidential unless disclosure serves professional purposes or is required by law. Failure to do so may result in the revoking or of suspending of Kentucky certification. Protecting students' confidentiality is the law, and it's also the right thing to do. You have just completed the confidentiality training course requirements. And remember, we are and can be held accountable for those. All right. That should have confidentiality.